first Europeans according to the Bible, beyond conventional stories. Dive into a tale of mystery and ancestral legacy. Discover the hidden enigmas in ancient passages and the enduring lessons about identity and origin. Are you ready to explore the roots that defined entire civilizations? After the Great Flood, according to the biblical account in Genesis, Noah and his family were the only survivors, preserved by God to repopulate the earth. His three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, played crucial roles in this new beginning for humanity. Through the genealogy detailed in Genesis chapter 10, it is revealed how the descendants of these three sons spread to different regions, marking the beginning of the diverse cultures and civilizations that would eventually shape European societies. Shem, the firstborn, became the ancestor of many Semitic peoples who lived mainly in the Middle East and northeastern Africa. Ham, the youngest son, gave rise to various African and Eastern tribes. Japheth, in turn, was the father of numerous peoples who settled in areas extending westward, including regions that would later be known as Europe. The focus on Japheth and his descendants is crucial to understanding the biblical role in the formation of European identity. Genesis chapter 10 verse 2 specifically mentions the sons of Japheth: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. These names not only identify ancient peoples, but also mark the initial steps toward the ethnic and cultural diversification that would characterize Europe in later times. The dispersion of Japheth's descendants westward, beyond the known borders of that time, reveals a migratory movement that carried these groups to new lands. This movement not only meant geographic expansion, but also interaction with diverse cultures and societies, enriching the European cultural landscape with new influences and traditions. The biblical account not only provides a historical perspective, but also invites reflection on human diversity and unity in God's creation. From the first steps of Noah's descendants after the flood to the development of complex civilizations, we see how divine providence guides the course of human history, shaping identities and assigning territories. For us, this account teaches the importance of cultural and ethnic diversity and challenges us to value and respect the different traditions and heritages that enrich our human experience. It also reminds us that despite our differences, we are all part of one humanity, created in the image of God and called to live in harmony and love with one another. To understand the origin of Europeans, according to the biblical account, it is fundamental to explore the figure of Japheth, one of Noah's three sons, mentioned in the context of the flood. According to the book of Genesis, Japheth was the son of Noah, who, along with his brothers Shem and Ham, survived the great flood that devastated the earth in ancient times. Japheth is described in Genesis chapter 10 as the father of several sons, whose descendants dispersed and settled in different geographic regions. Among Japheth's sons mentioned in the biblical text are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. These names not only represent specific individuals in Japheth's genealogy, but are also ancestors of peoples and nations that would eventually identify with the regions of Europe and its surroundings. Gomer, for example, is mentioned in biblical texts as a descendant of Japheth, whose sons, such as Ashkenaz, were historically associated with certain regions in Central and Eastern Europe. Magog, on the other hand, is a name that has been related to mythical figures and peoples from the northern and eastern steppes of Europe in various ancient traditions and texts. Madai, another son of Japheth, is identified as the progenitor of the Medes, an ancient people who lived in what is now part of Iran. Javan, whose name is closely linked to the Greeks in biblical tradition, is considered the ancestor of the Ionians, who were historically associated with Greek culture and civilization. Tubal and Meshech, are mentioned as the ancestors of peoples traditionally associated with regions of the Caucasus and Anatolia, respectively. Tiras, in turn, has been linked with tribes inhabiting the coasts of the Black Sea and its surroundings. The account of Japheth's descendants not only provides a detailed genealogy, but also reveals how these family branches spread across vast geographic regions, contributing to the ethnic and cultural diversity that characterizes Europe and its surroundings. This process of dispersion and settlement not only laid the foundations for future migrations and cultural mixes in the region, but also influenced the development of languages, traditions, and social structures that formed European civilizations. Exploring the history of Japheth and his descendants awakens a deeper understanding of how biblical accounts not only document ancestral genealogy, but also offer a perspective on human interactions and adaptation to different geographic and cultural environments. Javan, the fourth son of Japheth according to the biblical account in Genesis, sparks particular interest due to his connection with the ancient Greeks and their influential legacy in European culture. In the biblical genealogy, Javan is mentioned as the ancestor of the Ionians, one of the Greek tribes whose influence was fundamental in the development of classical civilization. The Ionians, descendants of Javan, settled in the coastal regions of Asia Minor, known today as Western Turkey. From there, they extended their cultural and commercial influence to the Aegean Islands and adjacent coasts. This geographical expansion not only allowed them to prosper economically, but also to spread their ideas and traditions among other cultures of the Eastern Mediterranean. The contribution of the ancient Greeks, especially the Ionians, to philosophical thought was monumental. From Thales of Miletus, considered the first philosopher in Western history, to great thinkers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, Greek philosophy laid the foundations for logical reasoning, ethics, and metaphysics that would profoundly influence Western Europe and beyond. In addition to philosophy, the ancient Greeks, including the Ionians, made significant contributions to literature. The epic poetry of Homer, recounting heroic deeds in works such as the Iliad and the Odyssey, not only entertained generations, but also transmitted cultural and ethical values that persisted in later European literature. The political structure of ancient Greece was also revolutionary. Although initially organized in independent city-states like Athens and Sparta, the Greeks developed forms of government that laid the foundations for concepts like direct democracy and citizen participation in politics. These political experiments, influenced by Ionic ideals and others, became models for future political systems in Europe and beyond. The influence of Javan and the Ionians on European culture was not limited to the intellectual and political realms. It also encompassed areas such as art and architecture, where the ancient Greeks were pioneers in creating masterpieces that still inspire artists and architects today. From Doric and Ionic temples to sculptures and decorative vases, the aesthetic legacy of the ancient Greeks remains a key reference in the history of European art. Exploring the influence of Javan and the Ionians in ancient Greek culture reveals how the contributions of this civilization laid the groundwork for cultural and intellectual flourishing in Western Europe. Their legacy continues to be a source of inspiration and learning, reminding us of the importance of understanding our cultural roots and valuing the contributions of various civilizations in shaping our contemporary European identity. The migration of Japheth's descendants westward, which eventually culminated in the colonization of what we now know as Europe, is a fascinating chapter in ancient history. As Greek peoples and other groups descended from Japheth expanded from their original homelands in the Middle East and Asia Minor, they encountered new lands and challenges that profoundly shaped their identity and culture. Historically, these migrations occurred over several centuries, driven by factors such as demographic pressures, internal conflicts, climate changes, and the desire to find new economic opportunities and natural resources. The Greeks, for example, ventured westward through the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean, colonizing islands such as Crete and expanding into the Balkan Peninsula and beyond. This expansion not only involved the establishment of new colonies and cities, but also the encounter with indigenous cultures and peoples already inhabiting those regions. The interactions between the Greeks and these local peoples led not only to trade and cultural exchanges, but also to conflicts and assimilations that contributed to the ethnic and cultural diversity of Europe. One of the most significant aspects of these migrations was the adaptation of Greek peoples and other descendants of Japheth to different climates and geographic environments. From the fertile lands of Greece to the forested and cold terrains of northern Europe, these communities developed agricultural skills, navigation techniques, and survival strategies that allowed them to thrive in a variety of environmental conditions. The legacy of these migrations was not limited only to territorial expansion and physical adaptation, but also had a profound impact on the cultural and political development of Europe. Greek city-states, such as Athens and Sparta, established models of governance and social organization that influenced future political systems throughout Europe. Athenian democracy, for example, laid the foundations for ideas of participatory government that would develop in the Middle Ages and the modern era. Additionally, the migrations of Japheth's descendants contributed to the dissemination of the Greek language and other Indo-European languages throughout Europe, creating a common linguistic fabric that is still recognizable in the linguistic diversity of the continent today. Exploring the migrations of Japheth's descendants to the west and their impact on the formation of Europe reveals a complex narrative of human movement, cultural adaptation, and historical transformation. This journey to new lands not only defined the identities of ancient peoples, but also laid the foundations for the rich cultural diversity and exchange that characterize Europe to this day. The interactions of Japheth's descendants with other cultures and peoples in Europe played a crucial role in the formation of the diverse and rich cultural identity that characterizes the continent. As these migratory groups settled and expanded across various European regions, they encountered a variety of indigenous peoples with their own traditions, languages, and social structures. These encounters led not only to commercial and technological exchanges, but also to conflicts and cultural assimilations that deeply shaped Europe's human landscape over the centuries. From the early settlements in ancient Greece to the Celtic and Germanic expansions in northern Europe, the interactions between Japheth's descendants and indigenous peoples were varied and complex. In Greece, for example, city-states like Athens and Sparta established trade routes connecting the Mediterranean with the Near East and beyond, facilitating the exchange of goods and knowledge between cultures as diverse as the Egyptians, Phoenicians, and Mesopotamians. This trade not only enriched the Greek economy, but also introduced new ideas and technologies that influenced the cultural and scientific development of the region. In Western Europe, the migrations of the Celts and Germans brought about a process of assimilation and cultural syncretism with local populations. The Celts, known for their skill in metallurgy and elaborate art, spread across much of Central and Western Europe, establishing contacts with pre-existing cultures such as the Iberians on the Iberian Peninsula and the Gauls in present-day France. This contact not only resulted in the mutual adoption of cultural elements, but also in the emergence of new forms of art, religion, and social organization that characterized Celtic culture and its interactions with other European societies. The Germanic peoples, for their part, settled in areas ranging from northern Europe to eastern Central Europe, interacting with the Romans in the south and with Slavic tribes in the east. These interactions led to the formation of Germanic kingdoms, such as the Visigoths in Hispania and the Ostrogoths in Italy, which played significant roles in the collapse of the Roman Empire and the shaping of early medieval Europe. As Europe entered the Middle Ages, interactions between Japheth's descendants and other cultures intensified even further. The Crusades, for example, were a series of military and commercial expeditions that led Europeans to contact with the Islamic world in the Middle East, creating economic and cultural links that would last for centuries. During this period, trading cities like Venice, Genoa, and Constantinople became centers of exchange where merchants, artisans, and scholars from different cultures met and collaborated. Cultural interactions in Europe were not without conflict, as territorial and religious rivalries often led to wars and conquests. However, these moments of conflict also provided opportunities for military innovation, territorial expansion, and the adoption of new political and administrative practices that helped shape the political map of Europe up to the modern era. In conclusion, the interactions of Japheth's descendants with other cultures and peoples in Europe have been fundamental in shaping the continent's cultural identity and history. These encounters have enriched European heritage with a diversity of ideas, technologies, art, and religion that continue to be an integral part of the contemporary European legacy. By understanding these historical dynamics, we can better appreciate the richness and complexity of European civilization and its contribution to today's globalized world. The cultural and religious development of Japheth's descendants in Europe has been a diverse and rich trajectory, spanning from the ancient Greek civilizations to the various medieval kingdoms and cultures that contributed to the continent's cultural tapestry. The ancient Greeks, descendants of Japheth through Javan, left a lasting cultural legacy that has profoundly influenced Europe and beyond. From the early manifestations of philosophy, epic literature, and democracy in Athens to advancements in mathematics and science in Alexandria, the Greeks laid the foundations of Western civilization. Their ideas and achievements were preserved and transmitted through literary and educational traditions, influencing thinkers, artists, and leaders throughout European history. With the expansion of the Roman Empire, which included vast regions of Europe, the Greek cultural legacy merged with Roman traditions to form a unique synthesis known as Greco-Roman culture. This synthesis not only defined the art, architecture, and administration of the empire, but also established Christianity as the official religion from the 4th century AD, marking a significant turning point in the history of European religion. Christianity, in particular, spread rapidly among European peoples throughout the Middle Ages, forming the basis for a shared cultural identity that transcended political and linguistic boundaries. The conversion of Germanic kingdoms, the expansion of monastic orders, and the influence of the papacy in European politics were key elements in the religious and cultural unification of the continent. As Europe entered the High Middle Ages, various kingdoms and civilizations emerged that reflected the region's rich and diverse cultural heritage. From the Holy Roman Empire in Central Europe to the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms in the British Isles, each region developed its own political, religious, and artistic traditions that enriched the European cultural landscape. The cultural and religious development of Japheth's descendants in Europe has left a lasting legacy that continues to influence modern European identity. Humanistic traditions, the valuing of academic knowledge, and the pursuit of rational understanding are integral parts of European intellectual heritage, which continues to shape values and institutions in the contemporary world. Reflecting on this cultural and religious evolution, we can appreciate how Japheth's descendants have contributed not only to the development of Europe, but also to world history, leaving a profound impact on the values, traditions, and worldview that characterize Western civilization to this day. The enduring legacy of Japheth's descendants in Europe spans millennia, leaving an indelible mark on world history from antiquity to the modern era. Over the centuries, these peoples have contributed significantly to Western civilization, not only in terms of cultural, political, and religious development, but also in the transmission of fundamental values that have shaped the global worldview. From the Greeks and Romans, who laid the foundations of philosophy, democracy, and law, to the medieval kingdoms that preserved and expanded Christianity across Europe, the legacy of Japheth's descendants has been fundamental in shaping European identity and its projection into the world. Contributions in fields such as literature, architecture, science, and the arts have enriched not only European cultural heritage, but also human understanding in general. The impact of biblical values transmitted through generations has been especially notable. From the Christian ethics that permeated European morality to the pursuit of knowledge and truth that characterized medieval universities, the influence of these values has transcended geographical and religious boundaries. The conviction in human dignity, justice, and community service derived from biblical teachings has been pillars in shaping political and social institutions in Europe and beyond. In the modern era, the legacy of Japheth's descendants continues to be relevant. European exploration and colonization of new lands, the Industrial Revolution, and the philosophical and political movements that emerged on the continent have left a profound global imprint. Ideas of individual freedom, universal human rights, and scientific progress, rooted in European cultural heritage, have been adopted and adapted worldwide, influencing the evolution of modern societies and shaping the contemporary global order. In conclusion, the enduring legacy of Japheth's descendants in Europe is a testament to their ability to transform and enrich world history. Their cultural, religious, and moral contributions have left an indelible mark on Western civilization, inspiring generations to seek knowledge, advocate for justice, and promote human dignity everywhere. By exploring this legacy, we can gain a deeper understanding of the profound influence these peoples have had on the development of humanity over the centuries. Do you want to explore more about the history and cultural influences of Europe? Subscribe to the channel to discover more fascinating content on this topic and other aspects of world history.